Please join us in hymn 352, Find a Stillness. Those at home are welcome to sing along. Those in the sanctuary, please hum or embody the music. Good morning. I'm Mary Anthony, a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Gainesville, and I use she and they pronouns. I want to thank you for joining us in worship today. Whether you're in the room or you're watching from home, we're glad you decided to spend a bit of your week with us. Those of us fortunate enough to reserve a seat in the sanctuary, please set your cell phones and noise-making devices to stun. My current book in progress is The Warmth of Other Suns, about the Great Migration in the United States. If you are visiting with us today, please stop by the table with the green tablecloth as you exit the building. There, you will find people excited to talk to you about Unitarian Universalism in general and our congregation in particular. I invite you to take a deep breath and relax. Remember why you have come here today, to share some of your precious time with those who share their precious time with you. The sanctuary looks a little different today. We are celebrating Hanukkah and therefore have a menorah as well as our chalice. Our chalice lighting words today are from Reverend Gordon McKeeman. Let there be light. Let it shine in dark places, in moments of pain, in times of grief, in the darkness of hatred, violence, oppression, where there is discouragement and despair. Wherever darkness is to be put to flight, let there be light. And now, Rick Buncher, a member of our fellowship and its choir, will say the blessings and light the menorah for Hanukkah.
Good morning, all. So I'm taking what's called the Shamish. I'm taking what's called the Shamish or service candle to light the other candles. Obviously, tonight is the first night of Hanukkah, and we'd only light one candle, but for overall sake and impression, we're simulating the 8th night. I light from my right to left as I say the blessings. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'chigianu lazman hazeh. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has given us life, sustain that life, allowing us to reach this time, this moment in time. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Blessed art thou, O Lord, King of the universe, who has sanctified us and commanded us to light the lights of Chanukah. Means dedication, to light the lights of dedication. Amen. Thus may it be. Kind of reduced down to about 6 or 7 minutes for my talk until you hear the guest speaker. So there are a few things that I think are very pertinent to dedication, this dedication. So what is the dedication to? Well, for 3,500 years of Jewish existence, pretty much every great superpower that was sought to either enslave the Jews or totally eradicate them. I mean, think about it. Egypt, Babylonia, Assyria, Greece, Rome, Persia, all the way up to the Nazis. But most of these nations are either long gone or they're second or third-rate countries, while the Jews continue to not only survive, but thrive. So the dedication is obviously, first of all, for survival in the face of 3,500 years of challenge, but survival to give light to the world, to contribute greatly to the knowledge and the spirituality, which is why it is the Festival of Lights. Now, historically, Judah the Maccabee, otherwise known as Judah the Hammerer, wasn't going to take this lying down, and he had a rough bunch of sons, and they put together a guerrilla army. And after 7 years of gritty, brutal warfare, guerrilla warfare, they finally succeeded in throwing out the Syrian Greek hegemony over them. But what I'd like to do in my few minutes here is we have the 8 candles, and I would like to really read a kind of spiritual, mystical meaning to each of the lights, if I may. And I'm going to do it reading, I'm afraid to say, because I have a lot to impart in a short time. The Greeks did not herd the Jews into ghettos or press them into hard labor. Their oppression was a spiritual one. They set out to cause the Jews to forget God's Torah, God's teachings, and to abandon his commandments, thus reducing Judaism to a culture like all others. The Jewish Maccabees fought to retain the connection to the divine way of life, a bond based not merely on intellect, but also on faith and belief. In fact, the Syrian oppressors in Jerusalem that were tasked there by the Greeks were one of those many, many cultures that the Greeks said, okay, you can survive as a nation state, and you can keep your king as long as you adopt the Greek culture and serve us. So they were actually serving as a police state for the Greeks to oppress the Jews. The festival of Hanukkah is about overcoming darkness, both physical and spiritual. The beginning of any struggle is strenuous. Wouldn't it be easier to simply avoid the darkness and let it be? Another lesson of this night, dispelling darkness begins with one candle. You know what the saying is, one little light can knock back a whole night of darkness. So this is the second candle. Hanukkah is one of the greatest military victories ever achieved by the Jewish people. The vanquishing of the mighty in the hands of the weak. But the military expertise exhibited by the Maccabees is entirely ignored. Their victory, as well as their battle, was not based on the theory of guerrilla warfare, but rather on the pure faith in God's miracles. In fact, if you look into Jewish history, there have been incredible, miraculous victories of overcoming the great, to the point where even modern-day warfare strategists study some of the Jewish strategies. But there's a standing joke among the Jewish community because we put our faith in intellect and spirituality rather than physical might. So when we face a holiday like Hanukkah, we say, we faced overwhelming odds and we won, now let's eat. One could technically fulfill the Hanukkah obligation by lighting a single candle each night, but the universal Jewish custom is to light an additional candle every night. If you did the minimal obligation, you'd only light a total of 16 candles over the 8 nights of Hanukkah. But if you light an additional light each night, you end up lighting a total of 44. That's quite a bit more light, I'd say. This teaches us that when spreading light, it's not enough to fulfill the minimal obligation. Darkness is overcome with a constant increase of light. As long as even one corner of the world remains concealed in darkness, our mission isn't complete. Third candle. We did it once because we were inspired, a second time because it felt good. This third time, we do it because we're committed. In Jewish law, permanence and consistency are established by repeating an act 3 times. In geometry and physics, 3 is the number of stability and balance. A 1- or 2-legged table can't stand without external support, but a 3-legged table stands on its own. Fourth candle. The Greeks had violated the holiest site and defiled the pure menorah oil. Why specifically the oil? Oil rises above all other liquids and does not mix with them. This is the nature of holiness and corresponds to the innate character of the soul, the very character that the Greeks sought to extinguish. They did not destroy the oil, rather they defiled it by breaking its sacred seal of the high priest. For when the connection to God is defiled by external influences, when Torah study becomes just another intellectual pursuit, it is then impossible to kindle the lights of the menorah. Upon lighting the 4th candle, we are exactly halfway through the Hanukkah process of conquering darkness. 5th candle. Despite the Greeks' attempt to defile all the oil, a single jug miraculously remained unseen and untouched. This flask, which remained pure with its seal unbroken, was the basis upon which the temple was rededicated. Similarly, despite the material temptations that undermine our pure connection to godliness, there remains a level of the soul that can never be defiled. This spark of holiness continuously burns and longs to be fanned into a great flame. 6th candle. The single cruse of oil the Maccabees managed to procure simply wasn't enough. Yet they were not ready to concede. Just as their entire war was waged beyond the dictates of reason, so too they continued to act on a higher plane. The single jug of oil miraculously burned for 8 days until a fresh supply was obtained. The world was created in 6 days. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. Six represents the labor of working and perfecting the world. And our guest speaker will speak more on perfecting the world, what's called in Hebrew tikkun olam. Get near the end now. Seventh candle. While the temple menorah had 7 branches, the Hanukkah menorah has 8. When the Greeks temporarily disrupted the lighting of the menorah, we were not content to pick up where we left off. Rather, we increased our efforts of illumination and added the 8th candle. The temple menorah alludes to perfection within the natural order. Its 7 candles correspond to the 7 days of the week and the 7 facets of human emotion. On the other hand, the Hanukkah menorah corresponds to the supernatural. Its 8 candles have the ability to rise above the confines of nature. Now we get to the 8th candle. The temple menorah was kindled during the day and placed deep within the confines of the temple, while the Hanukkah menorah is lit after dark and within clear view of the outside. In fact, the menorah is often placed by a lot of people in the outside window as a sign of freedom, not just to the Jews, but to all the world. Hanukkah is really about the freedom of the entire world. 8 represents that which is higher than nature. This is why the symbol for infinity is the figure 8. On this 8th night, the true essence of Hanukkah shines. For the greatest teaching of Hanukkah is that miracles can and do happen, and that in the future, the miraculous will become the commonplace. Amen. Thus may it be. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Each week, we offer our congregants the opportunity to share the events that have caused them joys or concerns throughout the week. There's the Joys and Concerns book as you enter the sanctuary, and all are invited to email or phone in a joy or concern during the week. This week, the following has been written in the book. Norden Luck writes that my brother and I made peace this Thanksgiving after 20 years of not speaking to each other. Many thanks to Judith Kendall and many other helping hands for a lovely Thanksgiving celebration potluck, your fellow feasters. And a joy. We plan to decorate our sanctuary with trees and nutcrackers this coming Wednesday evening from 5:30 to 7:30. Join us. Thank you and the universe for still being available to the community in these unsettling times. It was wonderful to come home after being away for 8 years. And grateful we could all gather for community Thanksgiving dinner. That's from Judith Kendall. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the journalist Larry Hobbs, who persisted in shining light on the Ahmaud Arbery case. Were it not for his dogged determination, the video, key to the prosecution, may never have been shared. Those in the sanctuary are invited to drop a stone into water during our musical interlude.
Good morning. My name is Heather Arata. I am the Director of Lifespan Faith Development here at UUFG, and I use she, her pronouns. This morning I'm wearing a black shirt and a green skirt and my trusty Ugg boots because it's a little bit chilly this morning. I am an average height Caucasian woman of European descent. I have short brown hair that I have shaved on the side to reveal my mandala tattoo. And I stand before you at our wonderful wooden chancel this morning. And today is the last day of the month, the last Sunday of the month, and our last day to talk about nonviolence. But it's also the first night, tonight will be the first night of Hanukkah. And our story today illustrates both in a way. It talks about sometimes when we are confronted with great violence. Nonviolence means fleeing. And today we read a story about a young Jewish boy who survived Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, and arrived on the shores of America alone to seek his aunt. And yet he still holds hope. He still looks for light in the dark. Today we read Oscar and the 8 Blessings. Oscar's mother and father believed in the power of blessings. So did Oscar. Until the night of broken glass. His parents put him on a ship to America. He had nothing but an address and a photo of a woman he didn't know. "It's your Aunt Esther." His father's last words to him, "Oscar, even in bad times, people can be good. You have to look for the blessings." Oscar arrived in New York on the 7th day of Hanukkah. It was also Christmas Eve. He knew his Aunt Esther would be lighting the menorah at sunset. To reach her before the sun went down, Oscar would have to walk over 100 blocks on the avenue called Broadway. The city was terribly big. Oscar was terribly small, and Broadway stretched before him like a river. Oscar was already tired, hungry, and cold. His father's last words to him felt very far away. After a few blocks, he looked up to see a woman feeding pigeons. She'd offered him a piece of stale roll so he could feed them too. Oscar wanted to feed the birds, but he was too hungry not to swallow the morsel himself. The woman reached inside her coat and gave him a small loaf of bread. It was warm and fresh. It gave him the strength to keep walking. He saw a newsstand full of comics. One showed a strong man in a cape doing amazing things. He stopped bullets. He stopped trains. The newsman held out his hand. Oscar didn't have any money, so he gave the comic book back. The man called to him. "Keep it, kid. Merry Christmas." Oscar clutched his gift, his Superman, and he heard his father's words. "You have to look for the blessings." Oscar kept walking. He stopped when he heard music coming from a little alley where a big man was humming a jazzy tune. The man whistled to Oscar. Oscar whistled back. They made a tune as fast and light as the snowflakes falling around them. It was Oscar's first conversation in America. At the corner of the park, the boys were having a snowball fight. One boy slipped. Oscar leaped and caught him, just as Superman would have done. The boy was laughing, and that made Oscar laugh. But when he looked at Oscar's cold hands, he stopped laughing. He took off his mittens. Oscar put them on and felt the boy's warmth. He had something to give the boy, too. A few blocks later, a tall lady in a big coat walked out of a building. A policeman shouted, "Stand aside!" Oscar stopped short. "Oh, Thomas, it's just a child," the lady said to a policeman. "Let him pass." She winked at Oscar. The policeman moved out of Oscar's path. "Yes, Mrs. Roosevelt." Mrs. Roosevelt? The sun was setting, and Oscar began to run. He had to get to Aunt Esther before she lit the shamash. Running, he stumbled and fell. And a hand reached down and pulled him up. "Back on your feet, son." His father was right. People can be good. He turned the corner and ran down the street looking for her house. He ran past a woman humming a nungal. Suddenly, he heard a name. Benjamin? It wasn't his name. It was his father's, and it washed over him. She had a dimpled smile just like his. "That's Papa," he said. "I'm Oscar," whispered Aunt Esther. The end.
This is the time in the service when we ask for your financial contributions to the work of this church. The options to give will be displayed on your screen during our musical interlude. And we are busy this week. Virtual coffee hour after the service, meditation, elders lunch, and we just shared our annual Thanksgiving potluck. The offering will now be freely given and gratefully received. Sivan Rothals is a professor of women and biblical literature and creative writing. She has taught in universities, synagogues, and living rooms across the globe, and her writing has been widely published. She is the education director for Achayot, Jewish Women Writers, and is studying to become an ordained rabbi at the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. As a mother of young kids, Sivan knows that it takes a village, and so, as a rabbi, she is working to build that village. She loves reading historical fiction, and the last great book she read was A Thousand Ships by Natalie Haynes. She joins us today from Jerusalem by recorded sermon.
Hello, and thank you so much for welcoming me to your spiritual home here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Gainesville. Please know that it is an honor for me to be with you this morning, and I am grateful to the multifaceted gift of technology that allows me to join you here today from my home in Jerusalem. We all know that the internet is a mixed blessing, though there are some who would call it a miracle. If Hanukkah were to happen today, perhaps the miracle would not be one of oil, but of the internet. I would like to thank Rick for his contributions that helped ground my teaching today in Jewish history, ritual, and tradition. You helped illuminate this space so that I might be better able to participate in what Hanukkah is all about, increasing the light. 2,000 years ago, there were two great rabbinic houses, two schools of thought that were each named for the great rabbinic sage who led them, the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. These two schools were known to disagree about just about everything, and when it came to Hanukkah, they had a debate over how to light the Hanukkah candles. The house of Shammai said that we should light 8 candles on the first night, 7 candles on the second night, 6 on the third night, and so on, so that their number would decrease each night, and on the last night of Hanukkah, there would be 1 glorious candle remaining. The house of Hillel, on the other hand, said that we should begin with 1 candle on the first night, and increase the number of candles each night, until, on the last night of Hanukkah, we light 8 glorious candles. Now, anyone who has ever celebrated Hanukkah knows how we light Hanukkah candles today. The house of Hillel won. When we celebrate Hanukkah, we slowly work to increase light in the world. As I was preparing to speak with you all today, I was discussing this with my rabbinic mentor, Rabbi Stan Davids, and he shared something striking with me about the rabbinic understanding of the Festival of Lights. In the 21st century, we know that when the sun sets, it will rise again in the morning. We know that the darkness of winter will eventually recede and that the sun will return again, making the days longer and the world warmer with its light. But those who lived in the ancient world, those who lived in ancient pagan times, did not know this. When the ancient pagans lit their fires in the dark of winter, they believed that what they were doing was necessary to actually rekindle the sun. Without the burning of heaps of logs, they figured that the world would be condemned to permanent darkness. While the rabbis in the time of Hillel and Shammai had no such fears, they did believe that the lights they lit were critical. When they lit their Hanukkah candles in winter's darkness, they believed that what they were doing was partnering with the power of good to bring the light of love and human understanding to the world. For Jews today, Hanukkah is a celebration. It is tradition and custom, food and music, love and light. We exchange presents and fry foods and light the Hanukkah menorah because that is our tradition. But for a moment, I invite you to both channel the ancient rabbis and to connect with the ancient pagan roots of this winter holiday. I invite you to imagine that you, too, can help reignite the sun. In today's world, we face great darkness. We face bigotry and discrimination, poverty and hunger, a divisiveness that is tearing at the fabric of our society, a global pandemic that has claimed millions of lives across the globe. We all live here, together, in the middle of this winter, a winter that is both seasonal and metaphoric. Yes, we are all living here together in this winter, shrouded in darkness. But I want you to know, I need you to know, that we, yes, we, can actually help push back the darkness and rekindle the sun. Hanukkah does not promise that tomorrow will be a better day. Instead, it reminds us that, even in the face of darkness, each of us must do our small part to help increase the light. Hanukkah reminds us that what we do will actually make a difference. I recently came across the story of a gender non-binary activist who has pledged that, even in the face of hate, they will strive only to respond with kindness. Not long ago, this activist received a letter from an angry parent who was concerned for her child and who took out her fear and her anger on the activist. I will spare you a full dramatic reading, but their exchange went something like this. "You made my child sick," the mother began by attacking the activist. "Oh no, did I give them the flu?" the activist replied. "No, you made them want to change their gender," the mother continued. "You are sick. You are dangerous." "You seem really concerned about your child," the activist responded. "Yeah, of course I'm concerned about my child. I'm not some deadbeat mom, and I'm not going to help hurt my child by allowing her to hate her body thanks to a monster like you," the mom said. "You've clearly done a great job building trust with your child. Not every child feels safe telling their mom that they are uncomfortable in their own body. You've made your home a safe space for your child to be their honest, authentic self with you. That's beautiful," the activist said. "Thanks. Yeah, I told her she can tell me anything. But I don't want to hurt her by encouraging her to hate herself," the mom confided. "You're clearly worried about your child, and that shows how much you love them. Rates of self-harm and suicide are very high among LGBTQ children. You might be hurting them even more by refusing to hear them when they tell you the truth about themselves." "I don't want her to hurt herself," the mom admitted. "I told my Frankie she could tell me anything." "That's beautiful, and Frankie did." "Will it be hard for her to live as a non-binary person?" the mom asked. "If you are there to support them, it will be much easier for them. Here is a resource that you can reach out to for support, for both of you." "I'm looking them up now. It isn't easy for me. I can't change overnight. No one can. But I think that I am willing to try. Thank you very much for talking me through this without being angry. I want Frankie to have a life she loves, that's all." "I know you do," said the activist. "So do I." And in this way, the activist chose to respond to hate with love. I know that the theme of this month's teachings and meditations here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Gainesville is nonviolence. And here is a shining example of what nonviolence can look like. Choosing to respond to hate with love. Working like the ancient Jewish sages to bring the light of love and human understanding to the world. Choosing to be a light that can push back the darkness. This activist chose to respond to hate with love. They chose to be a light in the face of darkness. Will everything be better tomorrow because of this? No. But because they responded to darkness with light, there will be a little more light in the world. As I have been contemplating how each of us might help to increase the light in this dark hour, I have been thinking about the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, a Hebrew phrase that means repairing the world. As I've been reflecting upon increasing the light in the face of darkness as an act of tikkun olam, as a way to repair the world, I was reminded of another piece of insight that my rabbinic mentor shared with me. We think of tikkun olam, of repairing the world, as a standalone act of social justice. But tikkun olam does not begin with repairing the world. It is actually the fourth step in a careful process. The first step is tikkun ishi, an act of repairing one's self. The next step is tikkun mishpachti, the act of bringing wholeness to one's family. The third step is tikkun kehilati, when one struggles to repair the broken parts of our community. Only then, after working to repair one's self, one's family, and one's community, can we turn to repairing the world. I invite us to return for a moment to the houses of Hillel and Shammai, to the great rabbinic origins of the tradition of lighting one more candle each night of Hanukkah than we lit the night before. You see, in Jewish tradition, when there is a dispute between the houses of Hillel and Shammai, and there were often such disputes, we, Jewish people, tend to side with the house of Hillel. But why? Why, when a dispute issued between the houses of Hillel and Shammai, did we so often follow the house of Hillel? To answer this question, I must turn to a teaching that comes from the ancient rabbinic sages who came not long after the days of Hillel and Shammai. For 3 years, the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai argued. One said, "This Jewish law is according to our position," and the other said, "This Jewish law is according to our position." Then a heavenly voice spoke. The words of both Hillel and Shammai are the words of the living God, but the rule of Jewish law should follow the house of Hillel. And so the sages who came not long after Hillel and Shammai asked, since the heavenly voice declared, the words of both Hillel and Shammai are the words of the living God, why do we follow the opinion of Hillel? And the sages answered, it is because the students of Hillel were kind and gracious. They taught not only their own ideas, but also the ideas from the students of Shammai. In fact, they even taught Shammai's opinions first. By teaching the ideas of the house of Shammai as well as their own, by even going so far as to teach the ideas of the House of Shammai first. The students of the House of Hillel, even in moments of disagreement, were working to repair their community. They were working to increase light in the world. No wonder it is from the House of Hillel that we get the idea that each night of Hanukkah we should be working to respond to darkness with increased light. We have so much to learn, from the ancient pagans to the House of Hillel to today's activists, about how to be a light amidst the darkness. Only after we have worked to repair the self, the family, and the community can we work together to repair the world. One act at a time, one person at a time, day by day, night by night, increasing the light. It is for this reason that we follow the House of Hillel, with Hanukkah serving as a reminder that, candle by candle, we each must do our small part to help reignite the sun and bring increasing light into this dark world. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Thank you.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing hymn is Light One Candle. Again, those at home are welcome to sing, and those in the sanctuary should hum or embody the music.
Light one candle for the pygmy and Let there be light. Light the lights. Be the light